Hi, this is our daily tarot. We have 5 cards that came in today. No major arcana, but it doesn't mean that we're not necessarily working on some things today. We have the opening card of the Four of Wands. The challenge came in today as the Three of Swords. The way that we're going to get through the challenge is the Nine of Wands upside down. And the ultimate outcome for the day is a combination of the Seven of Pentacles along with the King of Cups. So we've been working on stabilizing some kind of effort that we've been putting in some direction of our lives that's going to create a structure that we can actually have some kind of stability and security in our lives. I say that because we have the Four of Wands. And one wand is a sense of our willfulness to move towards some new concept or idea. And having 4 of them is bringing in some kind of stability so that we actually are building towards something that is up-leveling our lives in some way. Unfortunately, we did have something come in, or something that's stirred in our emotional waters that's brought in some concern or worry, some storm of an emotional nature. Here we see where the mind and our thoughts are penetrating the heart. There's 3 swords piercing a heart with this big storm going on behind it. And this is our challenge today, because while we may feel the need and necessity to put energy towards stabilizing this effort, we're caught in a storm and our energy is pulled into this current of unknown and worry and possibly even some sense of loss around something. Now, if we consider sailors, and if they're out to sea and if a storm comes through, they would go out and retie their sails to anchor them so that they could actually catch a wind and not go into the whirlpool, right? But we don't always have that approach when we are in an emotional storm. We might just want to sit down, pull the covers over our heads, and want and wish for it to pass. And that might not be an easy thing to do. We might actually feel that we have something really important to do, and we can't just let our energy and effort be swept into this storm. Now, the way that we're going to get through that storm is the Nine of Wands. Now, upright, this is an energetic of learning from our past mistakes and learning from past experiences that beat us up a little bit, whether emotionally or mentally or even physically. We see this person in this card is looking over their shoulder at these 8 wands that are upright, and they are wearing bandages and they're scuffed up a little bit. It looks like they've been through some stuff. But this card came in upside down today. So what does that mean? It could be that we are turning over and over and over again, you know, this sense of worry or what we did to influence the outcome of an experience, and that we have some sense of hardship on how we showed up in an experience. And that's part of what we're working with today. Now, if we want to actually learn from our experiences and acknowledge that if we have something bigger that we want to stabilize in our life, and we can see where our will was like pulled away from our task, and that literally sent us out to sea, how do we create order out of it? How do we actually look at that experience differently, rather than just looking at all of the pieces that, you know, were hard on us? Which brings me to this final card that we have for today, which is the Seven of Pentacles. And the Seven of Pentacles, we see someone wearing 2 different colored boots. A pentacle is in between their feet, and then there's this bush next to them with all of these growing coins. Now, this is a different way of learning from experiences, whereas this Nine of Wands is learning from past mistakes, and quite literally, we could be beating ourselves over the head for things that we did or didn't do that brought us to the situation and circumstance that we're in now. And yet we still have an opportunity. We're still working with something. And this card is reminding us of that. It's reminding us to have some patience with a situation that we greatly value, and understand that time is an important variable in all things. Now, it's also reminding us to hold some of our attention aside. And what's interesting to me now that I look at this again is that we have in the Nine of Wands, we have an energy of someone pulling their wand to the side to look over their shoulder, almost if they expect to be hurt again. And we may be reluctant to go into a situation or a matter of heart because of that, because of this energetic of we've been hurt before and we're reluctant to go and enter into that again. But then we look at the Seven of Pentacles and we see that this person also kind of has this stance of observation, but they're looking at things in a different way. Instead of looking at things in a way of, you know, hardship over experiences, they're looking at it in a sense of observation and gaining value from these experiences and how they are developing over and through time, which is kind of interesting because they're wearing these two different colored boots, which also reminds us that, you know, there's a balance that we have to bring to the situation that we're in. We can't let ourselves be swept away in that state of worry that ultimately prevents us from being in the experiences that we want to be in, that brings safety and security in our life. And then this card came out too, as, you know, like when I lay out all the cards, I lay out all 78 cards and I let my hand lightly run over them and I let whichever card wants to come out, because I have large cards, right? These are 6x4 cards roughly, and they're pretty large, so I can't shuffle them the way that you would a normal deck. That aside, this card came out when I pulled out this card too. It kind of grabbed it along with it. So I think it's important to speak to this card, and particularly because I had an interesting experience today when I was just out walking by the river here. I saw this crustacean that was walking around in the river as the river was thawing. So there's this thin sheet of ice that is still on the river, but yet the river is still flowing underneath it. And out of the corner of my eye, I noticed this little creature. And at first I thought that he was maybe, it was just like a shell, but it ended up being a little crawdad or crayfish that was walking along and finding his way along the bottom of the river. And he went underneath the ice and you could no longer see him. And it speaks to the energy in this card, which is why I even bring it up, because there's so much going on underneath the surface of everyone right now. And we're in a lot of ways transforming that. We're transforming the currents that make the terrain that we exist in and that we move from in life. And if we consider that, you know, you look across the globe at all the different waterways, they're in different forms and moving and in movement all of the time. And this card speaks to this fixed energy of water, this certainty when it comes to a matter around our emotions. And that I feel like could be, you know, what's keeping us in this experience of the Three of Swords and the Nine of Wands, is this experience that some of us may have been moving through and working through and trying to heal from, really made an impression on us. And we felt a sense of certainty in how we felt about it for some time. And in a lot of ways, it's been taking our energy from putting it towards this stability that we ultimately feel like we need to create in our lives. It's kind of like, you know, the ground underneath your feet getting mushy and you're having to re-solidify it again. But this is bringing this up because we have this energy which just happened recently astrologically, where the nodes shifted from Gemini and Sagittarius to Taurus and Scorpio. And so they shifted in this direction. And so they're pointing towards where we need to be putting our energy and moving forward versus what we need to let go of and transform so that we have the energy to do that. And that's especially poignant for us all right now because we've been in this space where Uranus has been sitting in Taurus for the last few years, creating unexpected change in areas of stability in our life. And it also was in this square relationship with Saturn in Aquarius over the course of the last year or so. It had a few different hits in that relationship. And that is this, you know, intense energy around responsibility and how we you know, maintain stability while we're in this big shift of change. But with the North Node pointing to Taurus, it's pointing towards the direction of change that we have to move toward. And with the South Node pointing to Scorpio, which this card rules and governs, it's pointing to that which we need to transform and we need to let, quite literally, thaw out, much like the river is thawing right down the road from where I live. You know, time is the most interesting variable in all emotional experiences, because we can look at things when we're not being swept away by the current, and we can gather information and what we learned from that situation and gather something of value from it, even though it may have been a really hard experience. And it's something to look at and to consider that, you know, sailors, as I mentioned before in reference to the storm, you know, analogy, sailors don't necessarily go out to sea expecting to never run into a storm. And for whatever reason, we've been conditioned in our lives to think that, you know, happily ever after is just like over the ridge. But we forget that all of those fairy tales started with some kind of hardship. They started with some kind of storm that someone had to find their way through for them to be able to attain that happily ever after. And so if we think that we don't have to work for it, it's just a silly thought, because we've been having this seed in our hand our entire lives. And so we can't beat ourselves up when things go wrong or things don't come through the way that we had anticipated. Ultimately, we have to realize that we're still in the story and we're still writing the next chapter. And hopefully we're making a good experience for ourselves and everyone else. I send you a good wish today, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.